My lovely, lovely, wonderful people, a pleasant Sunday afternoon to you. If you have not yet made Jesus Christ your personal Lord and Savior, do so now. He's the best being ever. Certainly, that would be the best decision you could ever make. All right. Protection from sex offenders, Dr. Orville Taylor. Oh, one of my former lecturers at the great University of the West Indies. Monkey money. For those who don't know when we say monkey money here in Jamaica, the money is not enough. It's not sufficient to deal with whatever the issue may be, or the concern may be, or the situation may be. So we say monkey money. So monkey money, nothing can replace the dignity a person loses from being violated by a monster of a human who has no regard for the sanctity of another person's body. Sorry, it took me a day to go to the story after it broke last week. A female security guard posted at a perilous location was raped while at work. Mighty God, and you hear the location? A perilous. Wow. A sum of $10 million was awarded by the court to the victim. In real terms, this is probably close to the annual salary of the person who made the policy decision that led to somebody's daughter being exposed to a most heinous crime. I wonder if them think that the $10 million go and do anything. Real monkey money that move. You know that rape as against murder in some situations can be more deadly, though you're alive. And because of when I read on the psychological, emotional, and mental trauma, especially if the rape is really, really heinous and vitriolic and very malevolent, oh my God, and aggressive. Oh God, that memory probably never leaves the individual. Jesus. And what it can do to their bodies physically as well. Assuming that there are judicial guidelines which allowed for the court to hand down such a sentence, the pain and the suffering is lifelong. Yes. However, the money is paltry in spite of how much it looks like. That's not a lot of money. If they had said $50 million, then maybe you could say, all right, whatever. And I'm not saying that it would excuse the situation or reduce the effect of the situation. Please note that I'm not saying that. Oh God, I pray. Oh God, something like that never happens to me. Oh my God, just to even read on it's awful. Perhaps the worst four-letter word in the English vocabulary, rape, is a horrific and perhaps unpardonable sin. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? As it even relates to murder versus rape. Some rape can be more deadly than murder, though the person is gone forever who was murdered. If one has ever sat with a person who has undergone such traumatic experience, there is absolutely no way in which one could even feel comfortable sitting in a room with an animal instinct-driven human who committed such a crime. It is such an awful experience that one of the ways of coping is for victims to blank out that chunk of memory so that they do not have to relive it every day. Interestingly, persons who may have witnessed it or were in a position to know about it and were incapable of doing anything to stop it also undergo that trauma, and they themselves block it out or experience post-traumatic stress disorder pretty much for the rest of their lives. Lord. Rape does not only affect the immediate victim, but can have spin-off effects on their partners, relatives, friends, and others, including co-workers. Males generally cannot empathize except in cases where another male commits an act of buggery. That's when they can understand. That is so true. Jamaican law does not define rape as something a man can experience. However, just imagine what it feels like to have a pungent smelling woman. A woman don't smell good, smelling bad. Aesthetically unpleasant in every way. She ugly. Probably not even dress good. She not tan good. That's what they're saying. Holding on to you, perhaps with help, and putting all parts of her body in your face and even your genitalia, and you are unable to do anything about it. Multiply that feeling about 10 times for the woman, that is. Because it's it's slightly different in a sense. The men can be harassed, yes. So you see a ugly woman smell bad and she coming at you and so forth. And especially if you're a gentleman, you don't want to use that man strength on her and go and damage her and hurt her physically. So you're kind of not using so much strength and she's pushing herself on you, and it's like you're getting that molestation. That can be awful too mentally. The question of the liability of the employer does not even arise. At common law, an employer has an obligation at all times to provide a safe and secure environment within which workers should work. Safe generally means free from environmental and non-human hazards, while security speaks to human threats. Whatever the circumstances, there can be no condition under which a worker be forced to carry out his or her duty on the conditions which endanger his or her life. Where those conditions exist and the employer refuses to remediate the situation, it is a breach of contract and tantamount to a constructive dismissal for the employer. If these facts are established, this could easily be an unjustifiable dismissal within the remit of our Industrial Disputes Tribunal, IDT. Employers' obligations and the corresponding workers' rights are built into our Labor Relations Code of 1976. All elements of the code are relevant before the IDT and are very persuasive before review courts. While I'm puzzled that this was not the first time the employer committed this breach and the penalty being so mild, there is another general lesson to be learned. Employers are liable for the conduct of their workers, especially where they infringed on the rights of others. Our recently enacted Sexual Harassment Act established a Sexual Harassment Tribunal, SHT. If consulted before it was set up, I certainly would not like the acronym, especially if I sit in the middle of one of its hearings. I, as in the letter I, sit in the middle of one of its hearings. The IDT actually had the capability to handle sexual harassment matters because they fall within the general scope of breaching a worker's right to a secure workplace. Nevertheless, the Act makes some important changes because it also circumscribes the behavior of the offender to a third unconnected party. Thus, for example, if a worker made sexual advances or engaged in behavior of a sexual content, it can be irrelevant if the object of the action is tolerant or even complicit. A third person who goes to work should not be exposed to debauchery. So true. So very true. Even innocent behavior involving mischievous, consensual horseplay can land a worker or manager squarely in the category of sex offender, wearing the scarlet letter for life, and lumped into the monolithic classification of nasty men. The status of sex offenders has puzzled me for quite a while though. Is there something inherently different about sex offenders as compared to robbers, murderers, drug dealers, and other perpetrators of major crimes? Are recidivism rates for perverts higher than hardened criminals? Neither lawyers nor legislators have answered this question. We might not say it explicitly in our legislation, but certainly our jurisprudence seems to suggest that our lawmakers are not of the view that it is possible for a sex offender, and in particular a rapist, to become normal. Therefore, not only is a sex offender's registry a part of normal legal practice, but more significantly, once convicted of sex offense, including sexual harassment, such a convict can never be employed or placed in certain locales. Inasmuch as I am somewhat uncomfortable with the idea that it is impossible for certain categories of individuals to be saved, bearing in mind the Christian values of the society, it is always felt like a doublespeak. True, I want to know if a rapist is my neighbor, but should I know if he is a murderer too? Good question, guys. You know what to do. Read TikTok and YouTube. Subscribe. Give me one of those likes, and you can follow me on Instagram.